Alright guys, what we're doing tonight is showing how to repair a clock on a, this is actually a 1985 300D, and the clock just doesn't work. And what this repair entails, and I'm not going to cover this, but you pull out the instrument cluster, and then with just, I think it's 1, 2, 3, 4 screws, they actually attach here, 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 and here. You remove those 4 screws and you can actually remove the tachometer and clock assembly. Now, first thing is you need to get the hands off the clock. So there's the hands, there's the little hand, the big hand. And the way I do that, these are actually from a computer repair kit. These are for removing like microchips from a motherboard. This is old stuff that we used back in the day. You really don't do that much anymore, but these you can literally clip around the hand and pull up, and it will help pop them off. See, you have 2 little L brackets there. So then what we need to do is remove the, let's see, we have, so I'm going to put this screw here. If you look on the back of this assembly, you actually have a screw here, here, and here. That's your tachometer. And then down here you have a screw here, here, and here. That's your clock. Now right there, that small solder point on this little copper piece, there's a little solder bead in the middle. That's your ground, or your earth. So you have to desolder that. I just use a weld or a soldering iron. Desolder that, and then instead of trying to remove this tachometer needle, because I don't want to break it, I'm just going to remove the very small screws around the face, the gauge face, and then lift up a little bit and slide the clock assembly out. So let me go ahead. First I'm going to remove the gauge face screws. These are very, very small. It's like working on a gauge cluster. That's what it's like. These things are very small. You drop one of these, game over, because it's gone. Please God, don't let me drop one of these. All right. Now we're going to go around to the back. Okay, let's get that guy out of here. I mean, that's the RPM, and then here is the clock. Let's go ahead and get these out. Alright, the clocks are a little bit longer than the ones for the tachometer. Now I've got a 1980 300SD, and that clock still works fine. This car is 5 years newer, and this is the second 123 I've had come through the shop with a broken clock. I don't know what they changed from the 1980 116 chassis to this chassis, but something's different because the clock's breaking these. Okay. Alright, now I want to unsolder this little ground right here. So let's go ahead and get the soldering iron ready. The soldering iron, I've got it on medium heat. So we're going to tin the end of it. Then we'll wipe this off. Not sure if you guys can see over here. Here we go. So I'm just going to that's a wet sponge. So we'll just wipe that off. There we go. It just fell forward now. There we go. That is now disconnected. Hopefully you guys saw that. All right. Now, without detaching that RPM gauge, if I'm careful, I can just slide that clock out of here. There we go. Okay, everything else is left intact. So let's move this assembly out of the way here. And what we've got here, all right, the things that fail on circuit boards are capacitors. Those are 35 years old, however, 1985 to 2021. So I guarantee those have drifted out of value. You see that on guitar amps, computer circuit boards, clocks in Mercedes, anything with a capacitor on an electronic circuit board. If that's a 30 to 40-year-old capacitor, it is no longer within spec, and those capacitors need to be replaced. So what we're going to do, we see on the back of this, there's our ground. I know it's far away, but from the camera, but here's that's just like a little needle point. It's the ground that we desoldered. And then this is a neoprene, like foam backing. So we can probably just peel that off to get, there we go. Yep, see, this just peels right off of here. Perfect. There we go. I don't want to rip it. I just want to be able to stick it right back on there. Okay, good. There we go. So we have this off of here. There we go. We're going to take that little neoprene or foam padding off. We'll set that aside. Here's the circuit board. So there's a little ground that we unsoldered right there. Everything else looks good. There's no broken traces. So what we want to do is unsolder these 2 points here and this capacitor, which is those 2 points there. And then we're going to pop in some new capacitors. All right, so I'm going to pull on that. There we go. That side's out. I think that side's out. Almost. There we go. All right, there we go. So we have that capacitor out of there. There we go. There, that capacitor's out of there. And now let's get this other capacitor out there. Make sure you guys can still see this. So I'm just going to pull on the capacitor as I hit those solder points. There we go. That leg is still holding on right there. There we go. Okay. There's our 2 capacitors. Let's turn the soldering gun off. That have been removed. There we go. Remove the 2 legs from there and 2 legs from there. All right, so I just ran over to Micro Center and grabbed some capacitors. These are So the originals were 100 microfarad at 16 volts, and I just grabbed 100 microfarad at 50 volts. I also grabbed a 25 volt, but those are too small. The space between the leads is like 1.5 or 2 millimeters, and the space between these leads is 3.5, which is what the space is between the leads on the factory ones. So it's okay that it's higher voltage. It's the microfarads that's important. So let's open these guys up and solder them back in here. On the back of here, where they go through, the positive lead on the old capacitor was actually, the positive lead is the top holes. So on these new capacitors, they are marked the negative lead. You can't see that. There's a little negative sign right there. I wish my camera would focus better. I'm going to get a new camera, guys, I promise. Anyway, there's a negative sign marked there. So we know that the positive, also the positive lead is the longer one. So we're just going to try to stick that back through the factory holes there. There we go. All right, and that's how, that's how that new capacitor is going to go on there. And again, the positive lead is on the top. The positive lead is on the top, negative on bottom. All right, guys, let's see if we can get this on here. Put that right there. There we go. There's one. See if you guys can see that. I'll zoom in and show it to you guys later. Now we're going to put the other one in. I'm going to switch hands here because I don't want to. Alright, there's the other one. Okay, you can see there's my nice new solder points right there. So I'll clip those leads off. And remember, positive lead is on the top, negative is on the bottom. So let's go ahead and get the other one in here. What are you doing, Thomas? You come to lay at my feet and catch solder drippings on your head? Alright. See if we can do this next one, and that should be it, guys. Alright. Gotta be real careful not to touch the traces and melt them. There we go. Boom. Got that one on there. And let's get this other one. Boom. Alright, guys, there we go. Now I just have to clip those leads off and solder back in the grounding pin, which is right there, and put this back in the car. Alright, guys, so I just took a dab of super glue on the left and right side of the foam little backing pad and just tacked it right there back into place, so that will hold that. And push that down there. Oh yeah, that's on there now. Okay, now we got to reassemble this. Let's get all this stuff out of the way. So delicate. All right. So we got this assembly back into here. Now I got to get it lined up. We want our ground pin to stick through the back of here. So I got to line this up just perfect. If you have shaky hands, I do not recommend trying this. Okay, so I got the faceplate held on right there. So that's going to help hold everything in place until I can push the little ground through the back. There, boom. See how it just slipped into place? I just had to melt the solder where the grounding pin was, and then the pin slipped through the melted solder. All right. All right, I'm going to put a couple of screws back on this faceplate just to hold everything in place a little better. Okay, there we go. I don't know if you guys can see that, but I got a screw started, and that's going to hold everything in place so I can put the other screws in. All right. The clock actually, the posts that these go into are plastic posts, whereas the tachometer are metal. So the tachometer are machine screws, and the clock is, you know, self-tapping or you know, wood screws. All right. There we go. But since they go into plastic posts, you want to make sure and get them threaded straight so you don't crack the plastic post that they go into on the back of the clock. And they don't need to be tight, guys. This is stuff you just snug up. Alright, let's get this last one. There we go. Okay, our ground point is soldered in. Everything is reassembled. Now we got to get the hands. There's our new capacitors. Now we have to get the hands back on the clock. All right, let's see. There we go. All right, now we'll insert that one. Okay. We have the clock hands back on there. Let's make sure they still turn. Adjustment here. And slide it the gears a little bit closer, because you can adjust this mechanism. There we go. This is the adjuster mechanism, and they give you, like, Mercedes engineers give you like a millimeter or so that you can adjust it to make sure you get good contact. There we go. See how we adjust it? Now we have much better contact. Okay, let's get this guy back in the car. See if you guys can see what I'm doing here. All right, we got the finished assembly with our new capacitors on there, and this simply just sticks right into the back. And here's your clock adjuster right here. That's got to line up with the hole right there, so when you're putting it back together, make sure you get that lined up. You definitely don't want to force anything when you're doing this, guys. All of this stuff is so delicate. The assembly as a whole is tough and will last many, many years. but all the individual components are extremely fragile. Alright, we're just going to put all the screws back into the back and snug them up. Again, nothing is, you don't need to crank anything down here. This is delicate plastic it's screwing into. Alright guys, that is a repaired clock. Replace the capacitors on there. So let's get this thing back in the car and see how it works. I haven't pushed the gauge cluster back in yet, but we just set it to the current time, which is 12:10, and if you listen closely you can hear the ticking. The clock is now ticking. Alright, so we have set it at 12:10, which is the current time. I'm going to stop recording and come back, and we're going to see, check it out at 12:15, and then we'll push the gauge cluster back in there. Alright, here we are 5 minutes later, and boom, we have a working clock. So I'll go ahead and push this gauge cluster back in the console, and we are done with the 1985 W123 clock repair.